Welcome to today's episode. Jeff, growing up in the military. When I think about kids growing up in the military, growing up in any part of America or anywhere else in the world, there's several different things that they need. The first thing that they need is love. Love encompasses a whole gamut of feelings and emotions. It can't be faked. You have to really love someone because they could tell if you don't. The second thing is they need structure. I bet you that military kids have structure. But kids also need freedom. They need freedom to be themselves. And if you're having trouble with a teenager, because if you didn't have trouble when they were little kids, you're now having trouble when they're a teenager. If you're having trouble with one of your kids, it can be because they're not allowed to express themselves. They're not allowed to be themselves. So kids need freedom to be themselves because they can't be just like us. And the next thing is they need the opportunity to sometimes fail. Yes, sometimes they're going to have a few hardships. We want to make sure it's not too hard, too terrible, too physical, too mental, whatever. But sometimes they need that opportunity to fail because that old saying, what don't kill us makes us stronger, right?
Right.
So today we're going to be looking at growing up in the military. And I'm telling you, it's probably a little different for kids growing up in the military, whether their mom is in the military or whether their father is in the military. But today we're going to be looking at Jeff's life growing up in the military. His dad was a Marine. And
Semper Fi.
we're going to look at some of the challenges and maybe some of the things they even learn because they are in the military. So, all right. So, Jeff, it's not the first time you've been with me. It's my husband, Jeff. All right. So today I'm going to literally interview him like I usually do on my other podcast. So I'm just going to ask him questions and be letting him answer. And as usual, I'll add my 2 cents. So, all right. So the first thing is I want you to tell us a little bit about your dad and his service, what he did, when he was gone, those kind of things.
Okay, well, as far back as I can remember, my dad was a Marine. He joined the Marines, coming out right out of the Naval Reserves in 1953. And anyway, he was a Marine. I was born, and growing up in that, we had a very structured household. Not only my dad was first I can remember, my dad was a master gunnery sergeant, and sergeant before that, sergeant major. And anyway, he went through and he did many, many, many inspections. So the soldiers not only got inspections, we got inspections. So beds had to be made a certain way, things had to be cleaned up a certain way, done a certain way, because that's the standard in the Marine Corps and or any other branch of the service from that standpoint.
So Jeff, let me interrupt. So does that mean that he was in charge of making sure people made their beds and did all that?
He made sure everybody did everything they were supposed to do. Not only
Oh,
bed making, cleaning up. When you're the sergeant in charge of all these soldiers, you don't have to go through and check their bunks or their foot lockers, all that kind of stuff every day, but you do it on a regular basis, and you pull, inspections and different things like that to make sure they're doing everything they're supposed to. The structure is what makes the Marine Corps run smoothly, which makes the Army, the Air Force, Navy, everything is done a certain way every time. And by doing it that way, it allows for a structure to occur that there's no question, this is what we do next. There's
mm.
always a pattern. Now, that may change in war, but from a regular everyday life pattern, that's the way that works.
Okay. So the word gunnery sergeant, if I'm saying that right.
Uh,
So what does that mean? What else did he do besides making sure people made their bed and followed their orders?
oh, he was an inspector. He went out to all different type of other Marine bases around the world, inspected there. He that was one of the last things he did when he was in the Marine Corps. But I mean, all through his Marine Corps career, he was in Vietnam. Um, the I mean, just whatever Marines have to do. There's a plethora of things that they should do. from learning to fire a weapon properly, how to clean that weapon, how to do it blindfold, how to do all these different aspects um, of military life, and understanding how to, when you iron a shirt or a pair of pants, that type thing, making sure that everything is done properly.
All right. And so a lot of his job though had to do with guns.
Well, part of it, yeah.
I mean,
I mean, if you're in the service, guns are a part of your life.
well, per the name of his position, that's why I was
Well,
wondering.
no, no. Master Gunnery Sergeant just means that that's Gunny is a short name, or Gunnery Sergeant is just, it's another step in the cogs of the enlisted realm, moving up the chain. Private, corporal, sergeant, and then
Oh,
there's different standards of sergeant. And my dad ended up being the top of the top enlisted, which is the Master Gunnery Sergeant.
wow. So all these years when I heard you talk about that, I only connected it with guns because gunnery sergeant. Now, for all of us that are married, which you probably are, uh, there's a perspective, knowledge or no knowledge, and perspective and how we see things. And that's a great example for how we've been married all these years.
Mhm.
I've never asked you to explain that. Now you explain it, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea. All right, so that's cool. So, and his service. So, what kind what kind of deployment was he deployed? Did he work in a work? Did he go to war?
Yes, he was in Vietnam. He went to Vietnam in 67 and 1967, and came home in 69. And my mom saw him one time in all that time. She flew over and met him somewhere.
Oh,
And so they had, they let you get away from the theater. They call that, the war area is called the theater.
that's a nice
Um,
name for it.
well, it's just because everything's whatever, it doesn't matter. That's what it's called. Anyway, so um, there's so many different things, and my dad was very quiet about Vietnam, about war, about all the different aspects. And it was about 35 years after Vietnam, when he came home, that he actually shared some stuff with us, and just life perspective. Um, and in all honesty, how God protected him over there in different things. So I'll tell you that story sometime when you want to hear that.
All right. So, I think these days that so often we forget about the reality of the military. Like he was away right here 3 years from his family, doing all that stuff we would never really want to dream of doing. And then his family's being left alone in the military. And I know a lot of the wives and stuff support each other in that, but still, there's no taking away from that. And I think a lot of times that people have lost the reality of that. We take so many things for granted. And I know as a military kid, you don't take certain things for granted because you lived through that time,
Absolutely.
with your dad gone. So, how did that affect you and your brothers? Because you have three brothers. So,
Yeah.
how did that affect you guys when he's gone? Daddy's not there, right?
Right. Right. Um, well, I don't want to say it was a great negative. There was always that thing that dad's not here. So it was a great reunion day when dad got home. You know, I can still see him coming off the plane, ducking his head because he was so tall. And that's when they actually came off the plane, got on the tarmac, and then came back up into the terminal to meet us and so forth. And anyway, but during that time he was gone, in all honesty, my older brother Mike became the man of the house. And um, he started doing things and cutting grass and making money, to not necessarily to help out in the family, but to become the man of the house as it was. And of
Oh,
course, being second in line, he allowed me to go along with him, and I got to push the lawnmower some and do the usual things that you do when you cut grass. But um, there was a lot of things that happened during the time my dad was gone. My mom was a church secretary at Belmont Baptist Church, and she went through. And of course, when there's four boys, there's always going to be somebody doing something to get in trouble. And uh, even if you try not to get in trouble, it's like it's invariable. You're going to get in trouble.
Well, what I hear there is that as boys, you kind of stepped it up to help your mom because she needed you. And I'm sure y'all offered her a lot of support too. So your dad was deployed a lot. And so how did that affect your parents as a kid? Like we hardly pay any attention probably, but how did that affect your parents? Do you remember it all?
Well, I think that there was a certain amount of stress in my mom's life. I know there was stress on my dad's end, but you don't see him, you don't experience what he went through.
Right.
There was times I know that my mom was sad or down, or um, the littlest thing might get her upset. She sees something and gets upset because she's concerned for his welfare
Absolutely.
and where he's at and what's going on with him and just different things. And so, I know that those are the type things yeah, I mean, there was quite a bit of stress. I think that um, my mom and dad both had onset of high blood pressure in their 40s, early 40s.
Mm,
And so for the longest time, I always blamed that on Vietnam,
hmm.
and the stress and the strain. I mean, that kind of stress puts a great wear on your body. Um, but since I got high blood pressure and I wasn't at war when I turned in my early 40s, I've decided that maybe it wasn't the war that caused that.
Hereditary.
It's
Both
hereditary.
sides.
Anyway, but let me just tell you one quick story about my dad when he was in Vietnam. um, I don't know if you know what a bivouac is, but it's kind of like a half tent. It's curved over like that, but it's not a complete tent. And he was sleeping under the bivouac because it was warm. Vietnam's a hot place, And in the middle of the night, my dad hears metal bang against metal. Now, in the military, for those of you not in the military, if you hear metal against metal, it means there's incoming artillery or incoming, fire against you. And you either hit the deck or you go to the place of safety whenever there's that kind of thing coming in. And so my dad, when he hears that, he jumps up, starts banging on a helmet, and everybody jumps up out of their bivouac. They run to the place of safety, and there's nothing. There's no bombs. There's nothing happening. And everybody's turning around looking at my dad. And about 15 seconds after they get into the bomb shelter, pardon the expression, as my dad would say, all hell broke loose. And there was bombs after bombs and just multiple things. Well, one of those bombs hit directly on my dad's bivouac. And to this day, we believe that God or God's angel woke him up with that sound so that he was able to do that. And not a man was lost that day because of that early warning that
Like
he was given.
like he heard the noise before it was there. Is that
Exactly.
what I'm gathering? All
Yeah.
right. So like he was dreaming or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah. Go God.
Well, moving on from there, because being a part of the military and being a military kid, it has its good things that taught you great values and
Absolutely.
what's right, what's wrong, and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, there was some hardships in that, and that you had to move a lot. And I
Yes.
think a lot of times when you hear somebody goes, "Oh, I moved like 8 times when I was a kid," once in a while it's their dad's business or their mom's business, but most of the time it's military kids. So, what did it do for you, or what was hard about, moving a lot as a military kid?
Well, in my younger years, it didn't really affect me as much as it did as I got a little bit farther in elementary school, into middle school, that type thing. Um, we would be set and you get your friends and you're hanging out and all the different people, and realize I lived on the base. So there was hundreds of houses around my house, the on where we were. And so we had kids from all over there. So you've got all these friends, and then your dad gets transferred to Virginia or he gets transferred somewhere else, and you show up. Now realize in the military, people you just become friends with people pretty quick because that's just the way it is. But that was a really hard time, especially the older you got,
Mhm.
because this is my bosom buddy. This is Ramsey or this is Tyson or whoever it was. And I remember those two names specifically from North Carolina when we lived at Camp Lejeune. Um, and we played stickball together and all those kind of things. But that was the hardest part, was doing that right there. But also, not everybody can make friends real quick. And so when you move into a new place, you're the new kid on the block and you feel like everybody's staring at you. There's all those things. So listen, friend, if you're the new kid on the block, just know that this too shall pass. Okay.
Oh.
You'll get there. I promise it'll pass, and all the friends will come just like you had before.
Did your parents ever address that?
Oh yes, many times.
How did they address it?
My dad,
Oh, something nice now.
my
Get out
dad,
there and play with your friends.
yeah, my dad was be the Marine, be the stiff upper lip, be the tough guy, move on. And my mom would understand, and she would come along. She said, "Don't worry, you're going to make lots of friends."
That's true. Mummies are always there to soften the blow.
That's true. Now, as fathers, it's because it. I don't know if my dad really ever experienced that of having to move. I mean, he moved, but it was when he was an adult. He grew up his whole childhood right there in one spot.
In one spot. Yeah, he
And
did.
so it's different. And if you've never experienced it, so dads, if you move, just understand that you're moving, but also your kids are moving. And so, have that understanding, compassionate heart for them, because they're going to go through a little struggle when you do that.
And that goes back to no matter what is going on in your life, the challenges, put yourself in the other person's shoes. If we
Absolutely.
can just learn to see life from the other person's shoes, that might be your child that's, 10 years old, or it might be somebody you're working for, or it might be your spouse. Oh, yeah, we're at the extraordinary marriage, right? It might be your spouse. If you could put on the shoes of the other person and stop and take a few minutes and really see what life looks like for them.
Mhm.
When you can do that, you can stop and talk together and make some differences. So I'm sure it was hard for your mom during that time that your dad was gone. I really can't imagine being so worried at the
Yeah.
same time trying to keep your mind away from that and then coping with your kids. And when you're coping with one or two other things, managing all the household stuff, managing everything, the car repair, whatever all's going on,
Yeah.
you're managing it all. And there's a lot of single moms out there, or even single dads, and they have all their kids, and they're having to do it all
Yeah.
without any help. So, um,
One side thing just about that too, my grandmother did come to live with us
oh
for
yeah,
several months, and she was a great help to my mom, because my mom could go to work and not worry about us kids killing each other at home. Um, but anyway, there was something I was going to share about that, but it just went right out of my mind.
well,
I
that
thought,
never happens to me.
well, when I thought about my grandma coming, and
Ah, Granny. I
yeah,
remember Granny.
yeah,
She
and
had the typical white hair and the little white bun, and she giggled and laughed. She was the typical Granny, wasn't
yep,
she?
she was.
Yeah. Okay. That was my next thing was, did your mom work? So during this time that you boys, your dad was gone, your mom also worked?
Yes, she was
Whoa.
the church secretary at Belmont Baptist
Oh,
Church,
I
and
think you
so
said that.
she worked Monday through Friday, and do all the things that the church secretary does, the bulletin and answer the phone and took care of things and wrote letters, and
And then when she went home, she did all the things that mom and dad do.
that's exactly right.
Yeah, she did. All
I
right.
remember one thing too, that when all that was going on, my dad was deployed to Vietnam, and my we had the hottest summer ever in where we were, and I can remember it being like 106 degrees outside, and this is when we didn't have central air in the house. We had one big gigantic unit in the kitchen window, and guess where we all slept at night? In the kitchen floor.
Did you guys really?
Yeah,
All the
absolutely.
boys? Did your mom sleep in there?
I can't remember if my mom
I
slept in
doubt
there or
it. I
not.
bet she went to her bed, but and she got the fan.
Probably. the
Wow, kids, they can sleep anywhere.
that's true.
They can sleep anywhere. Well, and so anything else you remember about your mom managing you boys, considering that, whenever stress builds up, we don't deal with anything quite so well. Hey, let's go back to love, structure, freedom, opportunity to fail. All kids need that kind of stuff. But when we get stressed, we don't deal with anything. I actually was a little stressed this morning and had a little bit of challenge. So Do you remember anything specific on how she managed you boys? Did you guys have chores? Uh, did you have timeout? She couldn't say, "Hey, wait till your father gets home."
She could have, but it,
It'll be a while.
yeah. Um, I think that with the stress and strain of different things, that my mom was um, the heartbeat, the backbone of our family. And there's things that I'm sure that um, she wanted to say or do, or like wait till your father gets home type thing. But she had to step up, be the man and the woman of the household, the mom and the dad, as you said. The I can't think of anything really specific other than I know that she tried her best to make sure that we had what we needed, that we were taken care of, and things were special. She tried to make things special for us, like um, end of a baseball season, and going and getting that special ice cream, or doing things with the team, or trying to help me get through Cub Scouts because, believe it or not, when I was a young kid, I was a little heavy set, and for the life of me, I could not do a pull up. And my mom would take me over there and just encourage me as much as she could, till I could eventually do a pull up. So anybody out there struggle with that, I can relate. Trust me, but trust me, as I said earlier, this too shall pass, and you will do that pull up. You will be able to do the things you need to succeed in what you're striving to do.
Well, ultimately, I would imagine military families have a few more challenges than others because they are separated and there are extra demands made on that person that's in the military. And also, when they come back from war or
Mhm.
back from being away from their spouse, it's like one spouse has had to handle everything. And then suddenly it's a two-person thing again. And it's probably a little like when you first got married and now, like, this is what I do, this is what you do. And, once things change, because we've had a couple of times in our lives where suddenly things changed dramatically due to other factors slightly outside our little tiny circle right here.
Right.
And it would change the dynamics. And we didn't always figure out how to handle it. Uh, Sometimes it takes somebody who knows a little more than we do. So I will say, I'm going to share four things with you that are good things to think about whenever you're coming back together after a separation, or if you just got married, or if you're having challenges. What I figure is we can't look at everything. And
True.
when we have everything, it's like having all the cabinet doors open at one time. I kind of had that this morning. I had all of the cabinet doors open, not actually, y'all, not in the kitchen, in my head. All the cabinet doors were open at once, and my mind is just like all over the place. And when it's all over the place, a confused mind can do
Nothing.
nothing. In fact, it's not only nothing, but it's like you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to burst. So I imagine there's some couples, out there, whether you're military or you're not, that, sometimes we have challenge and we don't know where to start or what to do. There's different things in life that come into our relationship or surround us, surround our family with challenges or trouble. It might be financial. It might be absence of a job and trying to find work. It might be you have a troubled kid and they're causing trouble in the whole family. There's a lot of different aspects that come with that. But sometimes we have to stop. Just like this morning when I was feeling very frustrated. Sometimes we have to stop and we have to think, what can I do? What one thing can I do? I know in July this year, episode 38, I'm going to switch my format a little bit on my podcast. And every week, I'm going to attack one problem that couples have in marriage, one problem that they have. But, ultimately, marriages with high standards thrive. And I'm telling you, like it or not, turn me off, whatever. But I'm telling you that high standards, high values, reaching for something more, not settling for where you're at, but reaching for something more makes a difference in your marriage. And we may be doing that in our job, or we may be doing that with our kids, trying to help our kids grow and reach for that something more, become all that they can be. But we forget about ourselves personally, each one of us.
Mhm.
And then bringing those together with two people married, growing in the same direction, wanting the same things, respecting each other, paying attention to each other. And we all fall off the wagon sometimes, but it's really important to be aware because we are either being reactive. This morning, I was being reactive, or we are being proactive. And sometimes we just get in that place where we can't do anything but be reactive because we're just emptied out.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of things that you can do in order to raise the standards and ways that we can respect each other. There's a lot of words that are put out there these days. I'm not even going to say them because I don't appreciate them. There's one word, whether it's with our spouse or with our kids or in public, and it's the word respect.
Mm-hmm.
When you respect yourself first, you can respect others. When you respect others, you respect yourself. Number one, when it comes to your spouse, respecting your spouse is listening.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we all have a challenge with that sometimes. We're distracted. Stuff's going on. We're thinking about ourselves, what we have to do, and we're not listening. But listening shows your spouse that they are important enough to you to listen. And sometimes we get into bad habits and we forget to do that. So number one is working on our own listening skills. Number two is giving credit to each other for our differences. Thank goodness we're not all alike. Jeff thinks in a whole different direction. He has a great sense of direction. He's great book knowledge. He was really high in our class, and he can fix anything. If I take it apart, it's not going to get put back together. So, give credit for those differences. He's super patient, super easy. He's always there for me, and I would say for me, probably I am solutions minded. So I'm going to figure out what's the best way, the fastest way, least resistance. I'm going to figure out how I can do something timely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my big things that's important to me. But give credit to each other for your differences. The third thing is, wait for it, have patience. I'm going to sing a little song to you that I was singing with my granddaughter yesterday because she started singing it. It's from way back. It goes, have patience. Don't be in such a hurry. When you get impatient, you only start to worry. Remember that God is patient too. And think of all the times when others have to wait for you. She picked that up and she started singing it because I sing it to her sometimes. But that's what patience is. And sometimes we have to hit a pause button, take a breath, zip our lip, and have patience. And then the last one is lifting each other up. Give a little praise, give a little appreciation, lift each other up. So no matter where you are in your marriage, find something your spouse is doing that is good. What if they weren't doing the dishes? Or what if they weren't putting their paycheck in the bank to pay the bills? What if they weren't doing whatever it is, doing the yard? I don't know what it is, but find a way to lift each other up and focus on that thing. It might be just one thing this week. Focus on that one thing. We get more of what we focus on. And if you're really having a challenge in your marriage, you may need one of two things. You may need a counselor. I suggest a Christian counselor. They're going to try to keep you together, or like I'm a coach, I'm a relationship coach. And you can come to me one on one and get one session and we can talk it out. I teach communication skills. It's more than you think it is. It's not just how to talk to each other, it is how to understand each other, understand your differences, tap into your strengths, to embrace what is good, and to learn to let go of what is really bugging you. All right. Really bugging you. And so often it's just like I was talking with some of the kids at church the other day. It's like we remember the bad stuff that's happened to us.
Sure.
We remember the hard things. So often wonderful things happen and we forget them over time because those bad things just etch themselves into our minds and our hearts and we don't forget them. Sometimes we have to let go of something so that we can move forward. So in communication secrets for marriage, I teach all the different behavior styles, how people think differently. We're not going to come to the same resolution because we're coming at it from different directions. They act differently. Sometimes how our spouse acts irritates us. Maybe they're not talking to us, they don't talk much. We talk about that. Thinks, acts, and here's the big one, responds differently. If you can understand, sometimes it's not about you. Everybody responds differently. And that's what I teach in Communication Secrets for Marriage. I also teach that in a 12-week program. If you're really having challenges, that's what you need so that you can learn the communication secrets and you can move past some of those hardships that you're having and get some support. All right. My name is Connie Durham. I am here with Jeff Durham, my very patient husband, who today I hope that some military families have gotten a little something from this because, they don't get the attention that they need, but we all have challenges in life. What is your challenge?
Can I share one thing?
What do you need to overcome? Of course, honey, go ahead.
First of all, if you are in the military, you're a first responder. If you are a doctor at a hospital, thank you for your service. Second of all, hang in there. If you're in the military, just know that you are loved and respected. And although sometimes people in America lose their way, we lose our focus,
Yep.
and we cheer for the wrong team per se. Just know that you are loved and we care about you. And so thank you for your service.
All right. So that was so eloquent and beautiful. And I have to say one more thing, as always, right?
Mhm.
You know what? What you just said is too often attention is given to the squeaky wheel. That means all four wheels are rolling along. They're doing their job. They're pulling the car along. They're great. But, think about that flat tire. That one tire goes flat and it pulls everybody down. And that's what happens a lot in life. It might be at school. It might be you got, you know, five kids and one squeaky wheel is pulling down the whole family. Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets too much attention these days. All right. Well, that is it. I feel like I'm ending it on a downer note. I don't like to do that.
No,
But anyway, remember that in episode 38, we're going to start solving one problem every week. And so you can tune in and here's something. It might be a problem you have or you don't have, or you can pick which ones, have the problem that you need to solve. So, all right. So this is Extraordinary Marriage. I'm Connie. This is Jeff, and we thank you for listening today.
share the love.